frozen, hungry, and outnumbered. How World War II soldiers survived winter with almost nothing. Cold didn't just slow armies in World War II, it killed silently, relentlessly, and without mercy. Long before a bullet found its target, frostbite, hunger, and exhaustion were already winning battles. Yet millions of soldiers survived winters that modern hikers wouldn't dare face without advanced gear. No thermal jackets, no insulated boots, no Gore-Tex. What they had instead was grit, brutal improvisation, and survival knowledge learned the hard way. On the last global war fronts, this is where we separate Hollywood war myths from raw human endurance. The first truth most people miss is that winter wasn't a season. It was a weapon. Armies froze because supply chains collapsed. Uniforms designed for parade grounds were suddenly soaked, torn, and, well, just useless. Many soldiers entered winter wearing the same clothes they had marched in months earlier. Survival began with adaptation, not equipment. Clothing that was never enough. Standard uniforms in World War II were rarely built for extreme cold. Wool coats absorbed water. Leather boots froze stiff overnight. Gloves were thin or missing entirely. Soldiers learned quickly that staying dry mattered more than staying warm. Wet fabric stole body heat fast, so they layered whatever they could find. Newspapers stuffed inside jackets, burlap sacks wrapped around legs, extra socks worn over hands as makeshift mittens. It wasn't pretty, but it slowed heat loss. Foot care became life or death. Frostbite didn't announce itself loudly. Toes went numb, then black. Soldiers rotated socks constantly, dried them near fires, and rubbed feet to restore circulation. Some cut holes in boots to relieve pressure when swelling became unbearable. Ugly solutions, necessary ones. Fire was survival, smoke was death. Fire meant warmth, cooked food, and morale. But fire also meant visibility. In winter combat zones, smoke could draw artillery or air attacks. Soldiers learned to build low, smokeless fires using small amounts of fuel. Trenches were dug deeper to block wind. Fires were hidden behind walls of earth or inside ruined buildings with blocked windows. When fuel was scarce, bodies became the heat source. Soldiers slept packed tightly together, sharing warmth whether they liked it or not. Privacy vanished. Survival replaced comfort. In foxholes, two men often took turns sleeping while the other stomped feet to keep blood flowing. Food that kept the body burning. Cold devours calories. Soldiers needed far more food in winter than commanders often realized. When rations ran low, survival depended on scavenging and adaptation. Frozen bread was shaved with knives. Fat was prized above all else because it burned slow and hot inside the body. Soldiers saved grease from meals and added it back into everything. You know, hot food mattered psychologically as much as physically. A warm meal could restore hope faster than a speech, honestly. Even melted snow, warmed with just a few crumbs of soup concentrate, made a difference. Soldiers learned not to eat snow directly, since it lowered their core temperature and wasted precious energy. Shelter built with bare hands. When buildings were unavailable, soldiers turned the land itself into protection. Snow wasn't just an enemy. Packed correctly, it actually insulated. Trenches were reinforced with snow blocks, and dugouts were roofed with logs, earth, and layers of snow that trapped heat. Some shelters, believe it or not, could be built in under an hour by experienced units. Inside, candles and small stoves raised temperatures just enough to survive. Ventilation holes prevented carbon monoxide poisoning. These weren't comfortable spaces by any stretch. They were survival capsules carved out of frozen ground. Movement was medicine. Standing still, well, that was dangerous. Blood slowed and muscles stiffened. Soldiers learned to move constantly, but without sweating. You see, sweat meant death later on when it froze. There were short marches, controlled breathing, and frequent stops to adjust layers. Discipline, in the end, kept men alive. Weapons required care too. Metal froze, and oil thickened. Soldiers stripped firearms of excess lubricant to keep them firing. A frozen rifle was worse than useless. It gave false confidence. The mental battle against cold. Winter attacked the mind. Endless white landscapes erased direction, and darkness came early and stayed long. Soldiers fought isolation with routine, cleaning weapons, writing letters, telling the same stories over and over. Humour, in a way, became armour. Despair was as deadly as frostbite. You know, veterans learned to break time into small pieces. It wasn't about surviving the winter, just surviving the next hour, then the next watch, then, well, the next sunrise. Lessons modern preppers still miss. What World War II soldiers proved is simple, really. Survival isn't about perfect gear. It's about understanding heat, movement, food and shelter at a human level. Cold doesn't care about brand names. It cares about physics. Dry beats warm. Fat beats sugar. Shelter beats strength. They survived not because they were superhuman, but because they adapted faster than the environment could kill them. Every frozen trench, every improvised fire, every shared blanket was a small rebellion against death. And that's the real lesson the history books rarely slow down to explain. If this deep dive gave you a new respect for what soldiers endured beyond the battlefield, make sure to subscribe to the Last GlobalWar Fronts. Share this story with someone who thinks survival is all about gear. History already proved otherwise.